My name's Ryan. I pretty much run the vintage account Legend Thrifts, collect t-shirts, I hunt for them, and either keep it for myself or even provide them to a good home for other people to enjoy vintage as well. So I've been thrifting in and out all my life, sort of, with my parents, but never took it seriously until about the early 2018. When I first got into thrifting, it was really tough for me because of the fact that you don't know what people want. So when you get into thrifting, you kind of get something called a death pile. So you think you can make money on certain shirts or certain clothing pieces, but once you get it into your inventory and you try to sell it, it's really hard to sell. At first I started small, just going through thrift stores, and before I would only just go to one thrift store, but as I started seeing more success into selling clothes, I started expanding more into different thrift stores in the area, and then even beyond. I started to actually spread out into different cities, and then from thrift stores I moved on to flea markets and yard sales. And as I did my research and got into vintage more, I was able to actually do a lot of bulk buys with other local resellers. Yeah, pretty much this is my setup right here. Yeah, these are kind of like my more personal stuff, and kind of like different nostalgia here. You got Ghost Rider, you got Hank Hill. I feel like in my personal closet, I can't hang these clothes because I feel like if you hang them for too long, the hangers start kind of ruining the shirts just a little bit. So tees are based on graphic and whatever the person holds value to it too. And then we got kind of different styles, and this is kind of my movie section. Dr. Evil from Austin Powers. So each drawer is kind of like I said, sectioned off based on genre. So we got some anime. Some people might know what this, but you know Akira, right? From 1998 or 1988, my bad. It's kind of like a film kind of beyond its time too. And we all know the staple of all the long filler episodes. We got all these Dragon Ball Z tees right here, and it's really rare to find the front hits because majority of them are always back hits. So if I see a front hit, I try my best to get it depending on the value. I definitely this week overspent a lot of money, but childhood nostalgia is worth more than money in my opinion. So for me, you have to be very transparent. You have to say if there's any holes, stains, flaws. So for example, if I was able to find a shirt, I would make sure to check all conditions. No hate or anything like that, but I just feel like some vintage sellers need to have better eye to detail, I guess you could say. So when I sell to a certain customer, I have to be very transparent about the condition of the shirt. So when I open up packages or even find stuff in the wild, especially with black tees, there's something called dry rot. It's basically the sulfur. Back then they used, in t-shirt companies, they use sulfur to make sure the tee stays black for longer. But the thing is, if you don't wash it, the sulfur actually eats on the fabric and kind of disrupts the pH balance on the tee, making it acidic. So this thing has not been washed before. It's new with tags. It's this Joe Santorini tee. And if I literally just pinch this tee, oh shoot, when I pinch it, it just rips like that, like paper. So I just keep this as a reference to show other people if they need, they want to know. But this is pretty much dry rot. I can use one hand and rip it like that. So right here for this tee, I asked specifically if there was any flaws on this one. From far away, it doesn't look like much because it's all over print, so it's hard to see, but I have pretty good eye to detail. So you can see right here, there's, these little splitting threads right here, pinhole right here. The thread is also splitting right here. And as you can tell, it's kind of hard, especially with all over prints, but you can see right here, someone actually tried to stitch a hole right here. You want to give kind of sellers the benefit of doubt too. You don't want to just be, going super angry at another person saying you're a scammer or anything. Just say, hey, like I saw this kind of like small detail that was not mentioned at all. Is there any way possible for me to get a partial refund, or even for me to ship the shirt back and get a full refund for it? And yeah, that's pretty much it. It's all about keeping your connections and just moving forward from the problem too. I do everything to get, shirts. I go online, I buy shirts, I go flea markets, I go thrift stores, yard sales, estate sales, any way you can think of, I do it. Once I receive it, I clean the shirts. Sometimes, you're not gonna find shirts in the best condition. So if there are some stains, like I can gauge to see whether or not I can get it out. And once I get it out, I make sure it's clean and everything, and I send pictures to people that want shirts, customers. And sometimes I'll do story sales, sometimes I'll do IG live story sales. But yeah, basically I treat it and then I send the measurements, pit to pit, top to bottom, everything, like every dimension of the shirt, I'll pretty much let the customer know, and I ship that shirt out. Originally, when I first started, I actually did local. Like I would actually drive like all over the place. Like I think the farthest I've ever driven to just sell one shirt, probably like 15 miles to sell like a $15 shirt. Shirts, not even shirts, but it could be hats or jackets or shoes. Like not everything's gonna come in good condition. So modifications that I might have to do are, the first step or the first thing that everyone can think of is just stains. Like cleaning shirts is actually like an artwork. When I first got into vintage, like it was so tough for me to understand like the process of cleaning and use the OxyClean or bleach and to get like these small blemishes out. Other things could be also the art of stretching shirts. At first, it was really tough for me to learn that because I've made many mistakes stretching shirts, because when you stretch it, sometimes you overstretch it, you make holes, or you make the neck like way too long. So like this neck is fine, it's perfect, but sometimes if you stretch it too much, it's obvious, like it'll hit literally to your collarbones. And another modification could be also, I've stitched shirts before myself. I'm not the best at it, I'm still learning, but hopefully one day I can start learning how to use like a sewing machine and stuff. Some tips that I can definitely give out for people that want to get into vintage. It depends. If you want to be a reseller, follow the trends. If you want to be a collector, then you find stuff that you're really passionate about. But yeah, I would say like first tip is definitely just try to find your passion of what you want, and then focus on one part of that part of vintage. For example, like if you're into Nike, try your best to be good at Nike, and then after that you kind of branch your way out slowly to different genres of vintage, such as music, anime, movies, cartoons. Like once you start at one thing, you can start branching your way out, because if you do different things too much at the same time, it gets all blurred. Like you can't just learn shirts, toys, antiques, like all that stuff in one go. You're gonna burn out easily, and you're gonna definitely have a huge death pile, because sometimes you'll just grab a bunch of stuff that you don't know what you want. I chose Instagram as my platform because I see it's ever evolving, it's growing, everyone's doing it, and it's just so easy to showcase your items and gain followers and kind of connect with other people and messaging. A lot of people have been going on IG Live, and it's good because it shows a face behind the account. You don't want to just read the name of the account, you want to know the person that's behind that account, the one that's hunting for those clothes, the ones that are posting the pictures for those clothes. Like, because of COVID, I'm starting to video chat with people that I've never thought I would, and gain more friends out of just this community over IG. But yeah, if you're into vintage, you can definitely get into it. It's not gonna be easy. It's not gonna be like you're gonna jump in and get everything. Like for me, it was a little more than a 2-year journey for me to be where I am. There was a lot of bumps in the road, but I think it's starting to go really smoothly for me. I have to thank all the friends that I've made in the vintage community. Definitely a huge shout out to my local Bay Area heads like Jug Life, John, Vintage Guys. I feel like my closest friend would be Enjoy Thrift, Derek. Every person is kind of has their own specialty. For me, like, I'm really heavily into gaming tees, you know, early Y2K cartoon tees, anime, very big head in anime, you know, in the DBZ, Akira. Like, I grew up with the early Y2K stuff like Naruto and Inuyasha and like all that stuff. I feel like vintage is the new way into fashion, and even like, I'm pretty sure a lot of people have mentioned already, but even Virgil Abloh has said that streetwear fashion is gonna die and vintage is gonna be the new fashion, because it's just thinking about, you know, not the fact that it's just like it holds a piece of history, but it's also like really good for the earth too. Think about it, like all the vintage shirts that were from 20, 30, even 40 years ago still exist to this day because of the quality that was made with it. So I'd rather just go to the thrift store, and it's not even that bad. Like, honestly, all you gotta do is just treat your clothing properly and wash it, and it's good as new. Like, if you can take hand-me-downs from your family, why can't you take hand-me-downs from other people? Made mistakes, but definitely learned a lot. And never be afraid to ask any questions, never be afraid to show your own personality, because without vintage, I definitely wouldn't have been so open like this. I paid up for this piece. Like, this is something that I've been searching for over 2 years now. The last time I saw one of these online was like 6 months ago, and it was basically a guy that's been hardcore into anime, and you can tell based on all the other stuff he sold, like he's been into a lot of like you know, like anime like conventions and stuff like that. So even though I paid up for this, is something like I had to have in my collection. So no regrets buying this one. So we got this 1997 Princess Mononoke tee. You got San riding the wolf. Dead stock. This is very rare. You don't see these on the market at all. And I don't even want to take this out of the bag. Yeah, it's just the detailing on this is just amazing. Look, it even has the freaking tag right here that people paid, which was $17.99 back then, back in '97. This was gonna stay in the collection forever. Like, no one's gonna ever grab this from me at all. Yeah. Vintage to me is like a piece of history. Before doing it, I definitely didn't know what was going on, but as each shirt you grab, it has a, you know, not just only the shirt's history, but that person's history. Whoever owned it had that history with that shirt too. It's good to have a hobby that you're passionate about too, and to like kind of like take your mind off of certain things. And vintage is the way for me to go. And if you want to get into vintage, I think it's a cool thing, not just only just to resell, but to also find your own type of fashion.